Okay, welcome back, guys. Um, okay, so this is going to be, what if Deku was a Titan shifter? Yes. Um, Deku will get in pretty much Aaron's powers, so yeah. The ship will be Deku X Mount Lady. Um, if you want me to add someone else to it, please tell me. But, yeah. Well, in, I'll get to it. So, let's say in the beginning, Deku's quirk will be Titan Shifter. It'll be called Titan Shift. Okay? So, let's say that Bakugo's picking on Deku. And Deku's just trying to protect himself from Bakugo hurting him. And Bakugo pushed him. And there's a stick poked him, made him bleed on his cheek. And Deku accidentally licked his blood. And boom, humongous out of nowhere, lightning came out of nowhere and struck him. And he was a 3 feet tall. He was a humongous titan or some humongous humanoid thing. Bakugo was scared. Even his friends even Bakugo's goons that were scared. They ran off. Bakugo stayed. He said, "Oh, you think you're so powerful, nerd? Oh, is that so?" And he tried to use the explosion. Doesn't phase him. And then Deku hits him. Doesn't kill him. Just hurts him badly. And he gets swung. He gets knocked out. And then Deku goes on a rampage. Because he doesn't know how to control his new powers. He just goes on a rampage. Hero sees this. They try to stop him. But they can't. There's nothing that they could do, really. Until, let's say, a strength hero with an strength enhancement quirk took him out. Knocked him out. And let's say they contacted, and when they knocked him out, the hero saw it was a kid. And he's like, take him to the hospital. He takes him to the hospital. And they say, that kid, you awaken your quirk finally. Right? He's like, oh, is that really? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, what was it? He's like, well, something that you turned into like some humanoid thing. Right? And Deku's like, ooh, cool. Nice to have a quirk finally. Right? And let's say they called Inko. Inko says, yes, we'll go see what his quirk is after he gets out of the hospital. Right? And they're like, okay. And yeah. And the next day, they go to the quirk doctor, see what's up with Izuku's abilities. And they see it, and he's like, okay, kid, let me see what you could do. Deku shows him, because let's say Deku says, I don't know how to activate it, sir. He's like, oh, okay. And then he's like, what kid? He's like, okay. And let's say it took 2 weeks to figure out how to activate it. And he's like, okay, now go ahead. Deku's like, okay, sir. What he uses it. And let's say that Deku Deku used a hardening type of ability, right? And the doctor was confused. He said, I thought his quirk was a transforming quirk. And she's like, yeah, it is. I don't know what this is. He's like, maybe it's another ability that goes with it, right? He's writing down notes, and he's thinking, dang, this is a really powerful quirk, right? And he just keeps talking. He just keeps on trying to. He keeps working, and then they got him Titan. and he got into the Titan form. He sees how massive he was, right? And when they were done, they were just done. They went home finally, and that was it for that day, for that month. Let's say 2 years pass. No, let's say now they're in high school again, and everyone knows that Deku's a very strong person, and Deku is looking like this right now, right? He cut his hair to look like this, and everyone knows what he looks like, right? And yeah, and Bakugo thinks he's more superior because it's a Bakugo. But Bakugo inside knows that he needs to keep trying. He needs to do something, or the Deku's gonna pass him. Right? Because he knows that Deku's a lot stronger than what he was years ago. So he's trying to figure out what he could do. Right? Let's say that let's say Mount Lady transfers to the school. Yes, I'm making Mount Lady younger in this version, okay? So yeah. And she transfers, let's say, a month before school ends. Right? She meets Deku because she heard that he kind of has a similar ability. Right? He's like, oh, hello. Right? And he's just nice like how he usually is. Because it's Deku, you know? He goes, he greets her, and they're just being friendly to each other. And let's say she gets kind of feelings for him, but Deku doesn't know that fully yet. He kind of likes her, he kind of doesn't. He doesn't know what this feeling is, right? So, let's say the month passes, and they say who's going to UA. Everyone, when they said Bakugo, they're like, oh yeah. And then they heard Midoriya, and they're like, oh okay. And then the new girl, and they're like, oh, well I haven't seen her ability. Probably strong if she wants to go to UA. Right? And then let's say school ends, Deku still writes notes. He's just writing notes about, let's say he doesn't really fanboy over a lot of heroes in this one, because he's more colded, right? Colder in this. So, he's just writing down notes. He doesn't really care what's going on. Let's say Mount Lady comes by and starts talking to Deku, and they're just talking, and then Bakugo comes out of nowhere and says, hey, tall bitch, right? He says, hey, tall bitch, and she just says, what do you want, Katsuki? Right, because she knows his name, like Deku. Right, and he says, why don't you want to go on a date with me? Says, instead of hanging out with that nerd. She's like, no, I'd rather hang out with the kid that you call nerd than you. And he's like, oh, why is that? Blah, blah, blah. You know I'm better than him. I have a stronger quirk. And she's like, no, you don't. I've seen his quirk in action. And I feel like you have too, in a way. And he thinks back to when Deku smacked him when they were just young. And let's say Bakugo still hurt, and let's say Bakugo's hand hurts from what Deku did to him. Right? And he's like, ah, shut up. I've never seen his quirk. And let's say Deku says, haha, sure, a liar. Right? And he said this kind of out loud. Everyone heard this and they were quiet. Bakugo's looking at him. Even Mount Lady was quiet. And he's like, oh, whoa, is that nerd? He says, sure, you haven't seen my quirk. I slapped you with it. I remember that. He's like, oh, you want to keep talking, smartass? Right? And they're just having an argument. And then the teacher says, okay, enough. Deku, please stop. Right? He's like, sorry, sir. And they're just talking now. And let's say the school day. No, let's say that they're just walking home. Right? And, let's say that the Sludge villain attacks, but instead of trying to get in, he's using Deku as a hostage, but Deku doesn't really care. He just walks aside while he tried to catch him. Because let's say he just dodges, because he knows martial arts and everything. Right? And he's just going, he's dodging, trying to walk by, and then let's say the Sludge villain hits him, and then he hardens his hand into this diamond thing. You see at the image right here? This is what he does with his hand. And then he just hits the guy in the eye and runs off. Let's say All Might comes by. He doesn't see Deku, so doesn't really. He's like, okay. And then he jumps off, but let's say that this time the Sludge villain hopped out because of All Might's jump. Right? And let's say that when it happened, pretty much Deku had to save Bakugo again. But this time Deku was kind of mad because the Sludge villain got away from the #1 hero. He's like, really? The hero let you go again? And he saw him, he's like, oh, you kid, I'm gonna kill you now with this kid. Right? He's like, sure. And let's say he goes into his Titan form. And it's humongous, the Titan. Right? And he says, so you want to still hurt me? Right? And he says this in a deep voice. And then he lets out his roar. The roar that Eren Yeager does. Right? And everyone is scared. Mount Lady was there. She was watching, and she is shook. Everyone, even All Might, was shook. And let's say that he let go of Katsuki and says, I turned myself in. And everyone was shocked. But before he got handcuffs, let's say he tried to go for a cheeky attack on Midoriya. And Midoriya just hardened his hand and punched him in the eye and knocked him out this time. They got nullified, they captured him, and that was it. And let's say that they just that that he walks home and All Might confronts him. He says, "What?" He's like, "What was that, kid?" Right? He's like, "Oh, that was my quirk." Right? He's like, "Oh, well, I've never seen a quirk that strong." He's like, "Oh, thank you, sir." Right? And he's like, "Yeah, of course." And he's like, he's like, "So, would you want to do something for me?" He's like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And Deku really just says, sure. And let's say All Might doesn't give him his quirk. All Might just says, well, I need you to can you turn this guy into the police? He was my fault because he was trying to attack you. I should have been paying more attention. He said, yeah, you should have. Ryan All Might was like, oh, sorry, kid. I didn't know it affected you that much. He's like, no, it just kind of got in my way. I was doing stuff, you know. And he's like, sorry, kid. And he's like, no, it's okay. I should be more polite. Right? He's like, oh no, it's okay. And he's like, if you say so. And let's say he got done and that was his day. And let's say he goes for the UA entrance exam. UA entrance exam. And the UA entrance exam. It comes up. And Deku's smart. He knows how to fight. He thinks that he's maxed out the potential in his forms and everything, but he hasn't. I'm gonna make up things during this, so yeah. And he just goes there. He doesn't fall, but Ochako does. And let's say Mount Lady is with him, right? And Ochako falls, he catches her. He says, "Are you okay?" And Mount Lady's like blushing because he's kind of like looking at her with death stares, saying, "You better not try to steal him. I already claimed him," right? And she's kind of scared. She's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," right? And she's like, "Thank you." He's like, "It's okay." He's like, "Yeah, sorry, I didn't ask for permission to actually catch you." She's like, "Oh, no, 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 it's okay." And he's like, "Okay, well, good luck." Right? And he walks off with Mount Lady. And let's say during there, Mount Lady's talking, then when President Mike's, they start whispering because they don't want to interrupt anyone. And they're just talking, they're like, oh, like they're just very quiet. They don't really care if someone says anything. Like, if they're like yell at them, obviously Deku's gonna do something, but he doesn't really want to, like, do anything. So, he just goes and he's quiet. Let's say Mount Lady accidentally sneezes really loud. Hold on, give me like kind of like mine, but not like how I sounded, right? She just sneezed, and it was like a cat type sneeze, right? Deku blushed like badly because it was cute. He said it's cute, and Mount Lady's blushing, and then Deku realizes what he said and started blushing, right? Because he just said I just. In his mind, he's thinking, oh my god, I'm flirting, right? And let's say Ida saw this, and he's like, "Sir," because he was talking about the robots then. He said, "Sir, there's only 3 robots and you're talking about 4. Would you please care to explain the 4th one for me?" He's like, "Oh, yes, sorry." And he's like, I was getting to that, kid, sorry." He's like, "It's okay. And also, you too, right?" And Deku's like, "What do you want? What do you want, glasses?" Right? And Bucko heard this, he starts laughing a little bit. He's like, "Nice one." And he's like, "What did you call me? That's unheroic." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, yep. Now, if you don't got anything, just be quiet for we can keep listening." And he's like, "Whatever." And they go. Let's say that Mount Lady is not with Deku, right? And they were. Let's say that when he's with Uraka and he's talking to her, he's like, "Sorry," and he's like, and Ida comes by and says, "Oh, you should not be talking to her. You gonna distract her." He's like, "Uh-huh, sure, totally, I'm listening to you." Right? And he's like, "How unheroic of you." He's like, "Yep, for sure." Right? And then when Mike says go, Deku blitz out there. He doesn't care. He really just cares if he gets in, if Mount Lady get in Mount Lady. Right? And give me a sec. And he's just going on about he's just taking out 3-pointers, 2-pointers. He leaves the 1-pointers for everyone else, and everyone thinks that he's just cocky because of that. And let's say the 0-pointer comes in because they see how well they're doing, right? And let's say a rocket gets stuck, and Deku sees that 2 0-pointers come out this time no, 3 instead of 1. 3 come out. And Deku's like, "Oh no, we gotta do something about this," right? And he goes into Titan form. Titan form 1. Yes, Titan form 1, I just said. And it's just a regular Titan. He attacks, and he's just waiting and waiting like, he's just taking them out, right? Right, and he he took out one, and then let's say the other one was reinforced with armor, right? With the armor one, he's like fighting it, bashing its head. Let's say people see him fighting, and they then they see why he's doing it, and they see Rock is stuck. So let's say that when he was fighting reinforced hero pointer, they got Ruckus out, right? And he's like, okay, so I could go ham then, right? He takes them out again. He takes them out with one punch because he didn't want Rocket to get hurt. So he uses a wave of wind to destroy it in one extra punch, right? So yeah, then boom, it ends, and let's see, Mount Lady also got another one, right? And during that, they were just fighting. And let's say Mount Lady got another 0-pointer, and she took that one care. She took care of that one. She didn't. She just took care of them. Also, she had more difficulty time. Let's say it was just harder for her, right? And she's just fighting. And let's say Bakugo's there. He tried to help her, but really didn't care, right? And that was the UA thing, or the UA entrance exam, right? And let's say that during the entrance exam, Nezu was talking about him. He was talking to everyone about the kid, and they're like, "Why do you like this kid so much?" Like, something intrigues me about him. I just don't know what yet about him, right? And they're all confused. They're like, whatever, right? They're like, whatever you say, Nezu. Let's say Endeavor takes notice of him. He thinks Shoto's stronger, but maybe he has a chance to beating Shoto, right? And they, let's say that before they left, they called in Midori to come in, and Drago's like, oh, maybe the nerd's not getting in anymore, ha ha ha, right? He's making fun of him. He's like, yeah, sure, says the person that got fifth place. He's like, what did you say to me, you brat? Right? He's trying to attack him. He's like, here we go again. Let's say he just hits him, and he goes. He's like, yes, Nezu? Like, he says, yes, sir. Right, with a stern tone, kind of. And he's like, your abilities, what are they? I'm really intrigued by them. He's like, oh, thank you. My abilities are, well, I have kind of two abilities. One's a passive, and the other, well, is kind of the true on quirk. He's like, ooh, like he's like, I'm interested, keep going, right? And he says, well, he shows and he says, well, my first ability is as you saw, is a Titan. And then in the other one you saw was a hardening type quirk, or a hardening type ability for my hand. As you saw, he said, yes, I did see that. Very intriguing. Right? And he's like, okay, so did you need anything from me? He's like, yes, I want to see your abilities in action again, if that's okay with you. He says, oh, of course. He's like, so how do you want them to see? How do you want to see my abilities in work? He's like, then he just says, attack me. He's like, attack you, sir. I can't attack you. You're the principal if I hurt you on accident. It's like, no, you're not attacking me. You're gonna have to capture me. And he's like, capture? What do you mean, sir? Right? And he says, All Might? And All Might comes through the door. He says, yes, Nezu. And he's like, teach your new rookie partner, I guess. Right? And he's like, rookie? What the hell? Right? And boom, he gets hit. Let's say he gets hit, but he hardened in enough time. He's like, oh, that hurt. Right? He's like, oh, that hurt. What is this guy's power? Right? And he's like, well, now you're gonna have some trouble, aren't you? He's like, oh, okay. I was not ready for this today. Let's see, Mount Lady hears this, and she comes in, she's like, Deku, are you okay? And she saw All Might hit him, right? And she's like, oh no, right? And let's say that she grabbed him and ran. And Deku's like, what are you doing? She's like, protecting you? And he says, thank you. And he's like, if we're doing this, we're gonna have to run faster. He's like, what do you mean? And then they see All Might right behind them, right? And she's like, oh no. Let's say that they went into their humongous forms and they just ran for it, right? And let's say All Might was trying to keep up, but he couldn't. He was tired. And Nezu saw this, that they were both faster than him by a mile. Nezu was shocked by this. He said, interesting, right? And let's say he has his own little notes. He wrote that down in his notes. And he's like, really? You're writing down those? Right? He's like, yes, don't judge me, All Might. And he's like, yes, whatever you say, sir. Right? And he's like, yes, sir, whatever. Right? He's like, okay. And let's say that they get the entrance letter. And they say, you're in class this. And if you want to come by any sooner, please do. Right? And he's like, please don't. He's like, I want to, but I also don't want to get KO'd again. Or get hit in the stomach. He's contemplating, and then let's say Mount Lady comes by his house and says, hey, Deku, did you get in? Because she's saying that, because she told him that I got in. That she got in. He's like, oh, so he's all happy for her. He hugs her, right? She's like blushing by this. She's like, Deku? And he's like, yeah. He says, what are you doing? And let's say that, that Deku was just hugging her, and his face was kind of in her breast. He says, oh, I'm sorry. And she's like, no, it's okay. Right? And she just said, you're a pervert, though. And he's like, no, it's not like that, I swear. Right? And she's like, I'm just playing with you, calm down. You always take these things serious. He's like, well, it's not fair when you say that. Right? And they're having like a little argument. They're like, well, you shouldn't have looked, you pervert. Right? And she's joking around with him. He's trying to be all defensive for no reason. Right? And then, let's say they went out for ice cream. Yeah. They went out for ice cream and just got some snacks and stuff, and they hanged out for the night, right? And Inko was away, let's say. Okay, Inko's not near today, or nearby. Okay, she kind of left. Let's say that she was like Kosashi, and she had like business stuff to attend, and he always knows this. And there he's just having fun. Let's say she slept on him. She slept on him and he's blushing. He's like, oh no. He's blushing and let's say he fell asleep. And let's say 2 weeks later, the first day of UA, hold on. Jesus. Right. First day. And He enjoyed it. He thought it was a nice little day. He's like, okay, that was nice and everything. And then, let's say he went to class 1A, Mount Lady was class 1A. Everyone was there. So they're just they're just talking, and Ida sees him and he says, "You, why were you being so rude and everything?" Right? And he's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, you were being so rude at the exam." He's like, "No, I wasn't. You're just being stupid." Right? And he's like, "How dare you?" And like, was about to use his quirk and then erase. It was always like, is this how we're starting off this year? Right? And he's disappointed in Ida mostly because he knows what family he's from. And he says, "Really, Ida?" Right? And he's like, "Sorry, sir." He's like, "It won't happen again." And he's like, "It better not, or else." Right? And let's say he's mad about this. Right? He's mad about this. And he's like, I'll get you during the auditorium, right? And stuff. And he doesn't really know, because he doesn't really care, because he knows that he's probably a lot stronger than him. Right? And let's say that during the the little thing that they did, you know what I'm talking about? Let's say that he was just talking to Mount Lady, right? And let's say Azawa notices, he's like, "Hey, it's you two, please stop talking." He says, "Sorry, sir, I was just talking to her." He's like, "Yes, I see that. Anyways, you can stop talking to your girlfriend now." Right? And they start blushing, because he just thought that they were dating, but they weren't. So he's blushing, she's blushing, right? And everyone notices. And let's say the girls, let's say Momo and Mina are kind of mad about this, because they kind of like Deku, just seeing him, because they think that he looks strong and mighty and all powerful and stuff. And they're like, "Oh, great, she has him." And then they say, "Oh, we're not dating. Sorry, sir, that we might have got you confused." Like, "Oh, never mind." And she's like, "Oh, yes. Now we have a chance, right?" Because let's say Mina and Momo are thinking, "Oh, we could just share him if we both like him like that," right? And yeah, let's say that he says, "Since you were the strongest, since you got the first place during the little event that we had, you can go first, right?" He's like, "Oh, okay, sir." Right, he goes first, and boom. He's like, "So, do you want me to go twice or once?" He's like, "What do you mean twice?" He's like, "Well, I have kind of two abilities. If you saw during the exam." He's like, "Yes, I did. Just use whatever one you prefer." He's like, "Okay." And he says, "Titan form 2. He goes into a massive, muscular type armor. A type weird armored Titan. Everyone sees this, and even Mount Lady is surprised because she hasn't seen this form yet. She knows she's only seen form 1, so she doesn't know what this is, right? And let's say, hold up, what's this? Storage. Oh no, crap! I'm gonna have to delete some stuff. Hopefully, I think I could delete some videos from just my phone, right? And let's say that during the, like, and then everyone sees this, they were shocked. Let's say a gust of wind pushed everyone back. And they were just shocked. They didn't know what this was. And they were just surprised by this. And let's say that lady was like, good job. That was a good job. Like, good. She's clapping for him. He's like, good performance. Good. Right. And he's like, thanks. And when Bakugo did it, he still got the same score. But Deku's was over his by a landslide. Right. And he's like, you damn nerd. How dare you think you're stronger than me? You'll never be stronger than me. Right. He's just saying all this because he thinks he's so much better than him. He's like, okay, sure. Right? And everyone was, Kirishima was like, holy crap, this guy's strong. It would suck if you were a villain, huh? He'd be like, yeah, I'd be really bad I'd be bad business. Bad news for you guys, huh? And they're all laughing about it. And some people think like, oh, that's weird how you'd say it like that. Right? Because people think now he's kind of suspicious about that stuff. That now people are sort of suspicious about him. And that during, let's say that it ended, and they had dorms already, and the girls had their own side, the boys had the other side. Let's say that the girls were closer to the dorm, to the kitchen, and when they got, let's say all the girls went to go get a snack or something, because they were all gonna have a sleepover to get to know each other. And let's say Deku was making some food. He was making breakfast for dinner, right? And he was making pancakes and waffles. They said, oh, hey girls, right? The girls are saying thank you. And let's say no, Mineta got expelled for purposes, right? And right, and the boys come down. They said, oh, Midori, you're making dinner, I see. And like, he says, yeah. And during, let's say they all ate, and then he's like, well, I'm gonna go work out, see you guys later. Right, and they're like, oh, okay, have fun. Right, and he's just went to go work out, and and let's say the workout room was right beside the girls. Right, and during that, let's say that during that they were trying to like, they just saw him, and they see he was muscular. Not lady's seen him, but she's seen that he's improved badly. Like, she's seen him before, but he looks a lot more muscular than how he was back then. Because let's say it was like a year after she saw him. Because she's seen him shirtless once on accident. Right? And everyone sees this. Let's say Kirishima. And they look at the other boys and they just say that they're not even compared to what Deku looks like. Because Deku looks like a beast. Right? Everyone sees this. They're all shocked about this. And Kirishima's like, holy crap, dude, you're very strong. You look a lot muscular than me. He's like, oh, thanks, but it's just hard training I do. He's like, oh, what's your training? And then he says, I do 100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups, 100, and then I do a 10-kilometer run. He says, holy crap, are you going to do that all tonight? He's like, no, I'll just do a 50-kilometer run, maybe, I don't know. He says, 50, that's a lot still, dude. He's like, not really for me. I got used to it pretty quickly. He's like, oh, I see. Right. And they're just talking. And say he's like, okay, well, I'm going to head to my dorm and go take a shower and probably going to stay up for watch a movie. You could join me whenever. Or he's like, you could join me if you want to. He's like, oh, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, oh, that's amazing. He's like, nice. Okay, I'm going to take a shower too then and meet you in your room? He's like, yeah, sure, go ahead. Let's see, the girls are kind of stepping over Kiri and Deku right now. They're stepping over Deku a lot more than Kiri, Midnight, and Mount Lady is a lot more stepping over Deku than how she was just a little bit ago. And then, let's say the girls played Truth or Dare that night to know each other. And they're like, Truth or Dare. And let's say it was Mount Lady's turn. And she says, Dare. No, she says truth. And then they said, is it true that you've slept with a boy before? Right? Because they just want to know. And she said, kind of in a way. And they're like, oh. And they're like, what do you mean in a way? And then she says, well, I slept with the same room as a boy, but I never, like, lost, you know. And they're like, oh, no, just have you slept in, like, with a boy? And they're like, and then she's like, oh, yeah, I have, right? And like, oh, I see. So who was it, right? Because they're just dragging out the question. And he's like, well, it's one of the boys that are in our school right now. And they're thinking of all the boys. They think Monoma first. They say Monoma. And he says, and then she says, oh, God, heaven, no. Not him. Not in a million years. Right? And he's like, and they're like, okay. Is it in her class? And she says, yes, it is, actually. And they're like, oh, okay. They think Kirishima? And they said no. She says no, and then they thought, let's just say Deku. Right? And they say Deku, and she says yes. Right? And they're like, oh, wow. And let's say Momo, Mina were jealous again. They're like, really? She got to? Right? They're kind of disliking her a little bit, in a way. They're just disliking her about it. And she's like, yeah, but it's just because I fell asleep on his lap. Right, and then he fell asleep, so, yeah. And they're like, oh, cute. Right, and she's like, it's not like that, though, it's not. I swear. They're like, sure. And they're just having fun. Let's say, during the movie with Kirishima and Deku, they were just having fun. They didn't really care about anything. And then let's say Bakugo comes in. And he says, why are you hanging out with that nerd? He's not even a person that you should be hanging out with. You should be hanging out with me. He's like, okay, that's not nice, first of all, and I just want to get to know him. Right? And Kirishima has a bad impression on Bakugo. Because it was their first time now meeting each other. Right? And he's like, sure. He's like, whatever. Right? And he walks off. Right? And that was the first day of school. Well, I'm going to end it there, guys. Thank you guys for watching. And, yeah. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, night, good morning, whatever. Well, peace out, y'all. Goodbye.